We are going to find out today what makes a picture book so that you can make the best picture book possible for our project. Now, how do children read picture books? You've got to think when you're making a picture book about your audience. Who are you writing this for? When illustrating a picture book, it is important to remember that not all children can or will read the words. Many of them will only read the pictures. Those children who can read the words will still look at the pictures, so it is very important to make sure they support the story, not just the action that is happening, but the feelings and pace of the story as well. Now let's explain what I mean by the feelings and pace of the story. A picture book is more than just pictures that match a story. A good picture book uses the pictures to help you feel the way you're supposed to feel. Think of your picture book like a movie with beautiful musical score behind it. The music helps you understand how you are supposed to feel about what is going on in the movie. Listen to these examples. What do you think is happening in the movie? How do you think you're supposed to feel? Now, these examples are all from Jurassic Park, so they're all the same movie, but the movie has different feelings at each point in time. So what do you think this one's supposed to make you feel? If you're like me, maybe you felt a little anxious, a little nervous. I know that was probably pretty quiet. I'm going to have the next ones be louder. But it probably made you feel cautious. And that makes sense because it's the beginning of the movie when you're introduced to the fact that this is going to be scary. Now listen to our next example. That one feels happy and bright and exciting. And so you're not supposed to be scared in this part of the movie. It's supposed to make you excited and happy and joyful about what's going to happen next. And then here is our last example. So that one feels very anxious and very active. They're running away from a T-Rex at that point in time. It is a scary thing. And so you're supposed to feel scared and like you want to run. Now, picture books, even though we can't hear them, can do the same thing. Pictures aren't music, but the pictures can tell you everything you need to know. The colors of a picture can tell you the emotions to feel. The size of a picture can tell you how fast to turn the page. The type of illustration can tell you how important something is. Each type of illustration is useful for a different part of a story. At this point in time, you'll want to get the note catcher that I gave you that looks like this. It says illustration vocabulary, and it has a bunch of pictures and spots for you to fill in. And let's talk about each type. So, the first type is called full bleed. A full bleed illustration fills the page all the way to the edges of the page. It's useful for an important scene where you want to see the background. We have an example here of a full bleed illustration. You can see that the tree goes all the way to the edges of the page. The blue sky goes all the way to the edges of the page. And the text says, Stickman lives in the family tree with his stick lady love and their stick children 3. And so this is important. We're going to talk about a little bit later about what exactly they're doing in this page, but we want to see their family tree that they live in. And we want to see all of the people. Now the next one is called a spot illustration. It does not have a background, and the illustration takes up only a spot on the page. Details are minimal. This is useful for something that moves fast, or if you want to highlight one important thing. With this one, we've got Stickman running around, and so he's important. He's more important than the blue sky or the forest he might live in, so we only want to look at Stickman. One day he wakes up early and goes for a jog. Stickman, oh Stickman, beware of the dog. You can see below, Stickman is running from the dog, and we're seeing the dog and Stickman's. This is important. This is all we need to know. And of course they have a couple of other details to make the illustration look interesting, but not distracting. It's fast. You wouldn't stay on this page for very long. You would look at it, see the dog is chasing him, and turn the page. Now our next kind is a full spread. This illustration is visible on both open pages, whereas this spot illustration and full bleed are right next to each other in the book. They're two separate scenes going on two separate pages. This one, the scene, takes up the entire open book. This can either be full bleed or spot illustration. This one is spot because it doesn't take up the full page. It's useful when you want readers to pause and spend a long time looking at the illustration. It's good for a calm scene or a really important scene. It's something that makes you pause and stop. And this one, that's a little too small for me to read, but you've got this big giant dog, and it's clearly a very emotional, impressive, important moment. Sequential illustration. Sequential means it happens in sequence. It happens one after the other. And so a sequential illustration is multiple illustrations together showing the same character doing different steps of a process. This one has a cat grooming itself. This is useful when you want to show passage of time or many things all at once. I've used sequential illustrations to show a child character who had to do a bunch of chores. And so you can see them doing all the chores, for example. Or a dog getting into some mischief, and what are some of the naughty things that the doggy did. In this one you want to see like, oh, the cat is grooming itself, and look at all the different ways it grooms itself. This can be useful to show all of that kind of thing. And then a close-up. It's a big drawing of a close-up of a character or object. It's useful when you want to give attention to an important but small detail. Now, this detail, in this case, is the sleeping girl, and she's not that small, but you can tell that in most pages of the book, she's probably not going to be illustrated quite this big, right? She'll probably be a little bit smaller and not take up the whole page. And then we have an establishing shot. We're actually ending with the beginning. An establishing shot is a big drawing from far away. It shows a character or place in its full view. It's the opposite of a close-up. It's useful to introduce a character or a setting, and we usually see it at the beginning. This one is definitely at the beginning. It says, once there was a frog who lived under a rock by himself. We can see the entire frog. We can see his entire rock that he lives in. We can see his entire world, and that nobody lives next to him. It's good in that it establishes who he is and where he is. Sometimes they happen in the middle if your character goes to a new place and you need to see what that place looks like. Now, for the rest of today, you are going to be exploring how illustrators use these different types of illustrations to make a symphony. Going back to that music analogy we used earlier on, each of those songs together go throughout the whole movie to tell a story. You can listen to the soundtrack of Jurassic Park and kind of follow along with how it felt. So what you're going to do is look through a picture book and count the different types of each illustration. That list is going to be on the back of your note catcher. You should notice how often illustrators repeat the same type and when in the story they use each type. If you are doing this by yourself, it's best to look at a couple of illustrations of picture books because illustrators do this differently. There's not one set way. Each book is different. Each book is meant to feel different. in our class, after everybody looks at them, we're going to compare the data that we found. So get going and get researching those different types of illustration.